Cook's house. The Houston Cougars returned 3 starters for the team that was 65 seconds away from winning a national championship just last year. And when they knocked off number 22 Auburn on Sunday, it was all about the freshmen, the new faces.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs Daily Podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and with a Houston fan or just a hater who came by, and there might be a few of those tonight. I know Auburn travel as well. Thank you for being Locked On Cougs. You're at this point on a first listen of the night, first listen of the next morning, or whatever the case may be, as you've made the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Now, I usually have some weird question at the top of a food or whatever, but honestly, at this point, I'm just trying to say, like, what in a PG way were you able to say once the final deflection happened in this ball game? Today's show was brought to you by our buddies over at Game Time, the best place to get Atlanta tickets, the lowest prices guaranteed. We'll talk more about how to get that fun and into the action later. I got to talk about this game. I'll talk about the new faces, new freshmen, et cetera, in the first segment. I want to talk about how this is a culture-feeling win for Houston already in the second segment, as early as the season as it is. And then third segment, I want to get more into the biggest of big pictures here. But first, as Giovanni says here in the chat, Kingston is the man. Kingston Flemings headlines this one. Kingston Flemings highlights the entire body of work in this one. Kingston Flemings has 22 points on just 13 shots, played 35 minutes as a freshman, and one of the biggest stages November could offer a college basketball player. He also had 7 assists and 5 rebounds. He did have 4 turnovers when you factor in how much he had the ball. I'll say that last one, I'm not really that upset about many of those. Now, Kingston. I remember, and I pulled the clip the other day. I can't find it at this moment, but the other day I called him. I found the clip where, as a middle of his junior year of high school, I called him a more efficient Russell Westbrook. He was that kind of explosive and that kind of competitor and that kind of aggressive, above the rim and all of that. And I still think that's pretty smooth. I like Giovanni here chiming in that he might be D Rose. It does feel that fluid, and there's some combination of all of that in what Kingston likes to do. Kingston's just a very tremendous basketball player, and I say that to say that in my notes here I have down. I think that he'll be where we start, because I think the truth is as athletic as he is, as dynamic as he is, as hard to stay in front of as he is. The thing that I took away from this game is, if he's going to be able to stop on a dime and pull up in the mid-range, like, people are going to have a real hard time covering him. He did a couple times early in this one, and then ultimately, it felt like, to me, that led to people sagging off of him late, and when they sagged off of him in the late first half, he drilled the 3 to go to halftime. Just felt the moment in so many different chances throughout the first 36 minutes of this game. The only real flaw I had in Kingston's game, and in the final 3 minutes, is really only the offensive side, is he had taken over the game to that point. And it feels like when they go to film, and I haven't given, everyone has people that text inside the pro, whatever. I feel like they go to film on Monday, and the breakdown's going to be like, Kingston, he had 22. We had the ball at the end. I know we had Milos using over here. I know we had Emanuel Sharp over there. I know those guys both played in that championship game last year. I know that Emanuel Sharp was the player of the Midwest Regional. I know that Uzan was the player of the Big 12 tournament. I know those guys are seniors, played a lot of college basketball. I need Kingston Flemings to attack the rim in that final turnover spot he had, where he threw the ball away, trying to get the ball to Emanuel Sharp. Like, that's kind of the only criticism I could have at this point. And then he ultimately makes up with that with being a part of 2 of the 4 stops, the final possession of the game. Like he just made up for it all. It didn't even matter, right? And so I can't speak highly enough of this kid. I will say, and full disclosure and biases included here, he's been on the show. He after his senior year wrapped up and he was going into his summer, he was looking to get talk to Houston Cougar folks, and he wanted to get on the show. Interview's still up. If you want to go check that out back in the catalog. he's a great kid, and like I know that we had him on the show publicly, and so that was cool and all. But like I want to stress, he is a tremendous basketball player, and I will argue he should be a lottery pick. He's that kind of a guard, and he's also probably a better kid. And like that is why Sampson went after him so hard, made him a priority, and brought him in ultimately. He's kind of Mark Chris Cenac's pretty good kid too, and also pretty good basketball. I thought early on he makes a really, I think it's his first basket. He makes a really tough hook shot, falling down, draped with defense all over him, and it went in. And it kind of bounced around a second before it went in the first, I want to say 2 minutes of the game, maybe 3 minutes of the game. And really, it felt like once that went in, you just kind of like saw his body language, like, okay, it's all going in today. And it kind of did. He was 8 of 10 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3, had 18 points on just 10 shots, didn't shoot a free throw. He got to 18 points on 10 shots and no free throws, which free throws, come on, refs, come on, guys. But it felt like he was in command in a way that we've talked. We heard Sampson talk about how like he has MVP caliber stuff out there, but he ultimately finally saw the shots going today. And once that one went in, I thought that it was pretty impressive. Then he like had the excuse me, he had like the turnaround at the elbow. He like caught and shot a turnaround at the elbow that was very like high level of like Tracy McGrady level of confidence. That's a guy that's a total killer. He had the catch and shoot on the Milos kick out in the final few minutes of the game. Might have been around the 10-minute mark. Might have been later than that. But big shot there as well. Like those kinds of moments happen once he finds that first one go through and goes, okay, basket's normal size today. The ball's going in. We're going to be okay. Right. Big moments out of him. And he's another kid that like, I've been thoroughly impressed by his maturity because like when the shots were not falling necessarily, he didn't let that impact his defense like at all. He had 13 rebounds here, 10 rebounds there, a couple blocks here, steal that. Like he just kept all those things going. And that's not a thing you see out of a whole lot of 18-year-old kids, right? And really thought that those are impressive moves out of him as a freshman. I want to talk about one other new guy, Kalifa Sakho. Now, Kalifa didn't have a bunch of points. In fact, he had exactly no points. He played just 16 minutes, which is, I think, less than people realize when you factor in the fact that JoJo and Chris had their own foul trouble issues. Both would ultimately foul out of this basketball game, right? And even with just the 16 minutes, and they had to play him for the size because Chase was going to be a little bit undersized in there, the power forward spot. Kalifa, I mean, I guess he only got credit for 1 block and 1 steal. He was involved in like all of these massive defensive plays in the final 5 minutes, including obviously that gigantic block of Tahad Pettit. When Tahad's driving the ball in that spot, having seen him gut the Cougs a year ago, it felt like, oh crap, he's doing it again. And Kalifa Sakho, another new guy, comes over out of nowhere. And I want to stress that like the Houston coverages and who's in help and who's in rotation, because when they are as aggressive as they are, Houston's going to leave stuff open. We saw it happen actually with the missed coverage where they doubled the post on the backside and no one slid down to cover up. I think it was Sebastian Williams-Adams. No one slid down to cover him. I think it was supposed to be Isaiah, another freshman. And like the speed with which it happened, all that coverage part of it is a part of what Houston's got to instill in the younger guys. That Kalifa is able to pick so much of this up, right, is a really impressive. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that coverage is not supposed to be a monster double because he didn't think that, or maybe there's some reason Isaiah couldn't have gotten there or whatever. That didn't know in their scouting report, but it felt like that. And I say all of that to say that Kalifa, the center position is really important in any defense. It's why, like the NBA level, centers win Defensive Player of the Year like most of the time, right? You're the quarterback back there. You're calling out coverages, calling out what's happening, defending the rim, playing the level and pick and roll, hedging and bumping ball screens, and like all those kind of things. Kalifa picking all of that up, and he's an older guy, right? I don't mean to say he's not like a fresh out of high school guy, right? But at a speed from Sam Houston to Houston is pretty dauntingly steep difference there. And he makes plays the game kind of stuff down the stretch. Isaiah, I should point out too, I just bashed him missing a rotation at one point, but his 3, I write down what time that 3 was at. Yeah, his three. Yeah, Isaiah 3 just under 6 minutes. Like, I mean, it was a big time moment for him and a big time moment for the team to kind of take that lead back on a Milos kick. Really, really impressive game out of him too, especially when you factor in he played 21 minutes that were really tough physically on a guy coming back from injuries. He still very clearly gets tight and he's loosen up and that kind of stuff. And you see his body kind of, get tighter as he's running sometimes. So he has to go aside and get loosened up and come back in. Just grueling, but he's out there running around anyway. And when they get him up to speed and gets those rotations right, like that's another one of these guys. Another one of these guys. I want to talk about this being a culture win and kind of things factored into that because I think that is something we talk about a lot for Houston. I don't know how much we articulate what that means. Regardless, I want to get there in 1 second, but before we get there, I do want to talk to you about our buddies over at FanDuel because the NBA actually, the Rockets just won a basketball game, surprisingly. I think they're trying to give that away. I don't know. I wasn't watching it too closely, but the NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you missed the start of a game, I want to get the hot hand going. FanDuel has live bets for everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your bets into same game parlays for a shot at bigger payouts. Every day keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making a late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets. Your first $5 bet hits. So head to FanDuel.com now. Play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Park Rangers locked on Cougs here, and Alexis chimes in saying he feels like he plays most like D Rose since he is so competitive. John BG runs the 4-meter dash. He was record Park as number 2 spot. Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, I want to talk about this as a culture win because, truthfully, this is a culture. This is a culture that's been building for a long time. Samson's not new to this. Houston's not new to this. But this is a very new team, and they played 9 guys today. And of those 9 guys, let me make sure I got my math right. 5 of them were not on the team last year, and one of them was Mercy, who played very few minutes. And they still find a way to gut this out. And I know that Auburn's got a new coach and new faces and all that, but that is not a bad basketball team. If anything, I don't mean this in a way and they're a really good basketball team, and Houston still beat them. Although there is a way to go about that. Yes, Auburn is ranked 22nd in the country. But before the coaching change, they were in the top 10. That roster had the ability to be a top 10 roster. The fluctuation there is because people didn't know what to make about Stephen Pearl. And for what it's worth, and watching the game, there weren't a whole lot of moments I felt like he wasn't doing the right thing. I might have called a different play on the out-of-bounds play here, or I might have wanted my coverage something different there. That's a really good basketball team Houston just beat here on November 16th, the middle of December in 2025. They have a couple more good basketball teams they play in Vegas in a couple weeks, and they have some challenging tests between now and then. But to already have this kind of a win under their belt, Sampson himself said in the post game, I want to make sure I got my note right here, that he was not too high or too low on this one because it didn't bother me to lose to them a year ago. He's looking at a lot of growth involved in this. And he's looking at the growth of the team, and he's I think getting clued into, or hoping we clue into, this team beat a top whatever team in America, and honestly has a lot of room to grow. Much like my hair is growing a lot under this Section 12X hat there, Giovanni. Section 12X, best place to get Houston Cougar stuff these days. Shouts to Frederick. So I look at this roster and this culture win. What happened? Okay, I think the biggest indicator, and I don't mean focus on the last possession because it's easy to focus on the last possession. I want to actually focus on the last offensive possession when Houston dilly-dallied a long time, and ultimately the possession ended after some moving the ball back and forth. The shot clock ended with Emanuel having the ball up near the logo, and Twitter went crazy. What are they doing? This offense is still so stuck. Why aren't we ever going to fix this? And I think it was missing the point. And I don't mean this in a way that's what I would have done. And I don't think it was the Sampson's first option. But at about the 6 minute on the shot clock mark, you see Emanuel lock eyes the shot clock and kind of realize what's happening. And he maybe missed dribbles one more time, but he knows he's going to heave a 35-footer at that moment. He was going to wait 4 more seconds and heave a 35-footer. And I say this because Houston is that confident they're going to get the offensive rebound. And I know that, today they just got 14 offensive rebounds, and frankly, they got slightly out rebounded on the game as a whole, right? But Houston is willing to take late clock deep shots that from Manny Sharp do have a chance to go in, I want to stress, because they're that confident in what they're doing, and they're that confident in the offensive rebound, and they trust their process that much. And they also know, frankly, if they don't get the offensive rebound and they have a lead, they get a good chance of getting a stop anyway. Right? That's a mark of the program. They understand where they are, they understand what they're doing, and they preach and coach and teach and work on offensive rebounding, the physicality, the toughness, especially. So I got a lot of complaints on the whistle in that game. I got a lot of complaints about Auburn shooting, let me get this number right, 33 free throws to Houston's 12. Auburn will always shoot more free throws than Houston in these matchups. I'm not saying it has to be the same. Those two teams did play a very similar style of basketball for stretches, and that foul count is nowhere near the same, right? However, in the final 90 seconds or so, it did feel like the refs kind of swallowed their whistle. Frankly, after the second Houston foul out, it felt like they kind of swallowed their whistle. It's okay, these guys are going to finish the game. They're going to play this game out here. And I would have thought, if you're telling me there is 35 seconds left, these are your lineups. Houston, a ball's going up from 35 feet. Who's getting the rebound? I'm picking Houston, and I think they are too. I think that's why they're comfortable with that spot. Spend the whole shot clock, get a deep shot off, see if it goes in, and if not, trust your guys. Now, with the fumbling of the ball, the execution wasn't quite there, right, obviously, but I do think that's a cultural moment for the team. Like, hey, we trust what we do. The other thing is obviously, in this part of the party, everyone in America's talking about, rightfully so, in the final 30 seconds, Houston technically got 4 different stops in the same possession, and that ultimately sealed a 1-point victory over the number 22 team in America. And again, they'll probably drop a spot or two. I actually feel like Auburn could be ranked higher than 22, if we're being completely honest, but not here nor there. You had the initial deflection, the initial block, then the second deflection on the inbounds play, on the second half of the inbounds play once the ball was inbounds from Kingston, ultimately leading to the big Sakho block. I guess I got the block in the second deflection backwards. The big Sakho block that then gets spit back inbounds, but falls out of bounds. They gave him 1 second left either way. And then you had to make a stop on the inbounds play at the rim, and Kingston Flemings is involved in that as well. Is there another program or coach, let's say coach and program in the history of this sport, that you could say you've got 4 chances in 30 seconds to score against them, you're only down 1, and the other team won't do it? Won't do it. And it kind of, every time the ball kept coming out of bounds, like, okay, time for another one. Okay, time for another one. Okay, time for another one. There was never a moment where I actually felt like, oh, the dam's about to burst. Like, they've done this for so many times in a row. How can you keep doing this so many times? Like, that was never a point of contention. Never a moment where I thought that would happen. I really, really think that this team is clicking on those cylinders. And I know the online conversation is not the actual conversation ever, right? It's always, frankly, a smaller fraction of the conversation than we want to realize. Like Twitter, I think someone put well the other day, is like Twitter is, however many thousands of people, and the United States is 330 million people. Like that's not everybody, right? But the online conversation around this was like, oh my gosh, these freshmen. I'm like, okay, these freshmen, and these upperclassmen are still shaking off the hangover from a deep run last year. Like, just wait when those things all line up and click. I thought Milos played better than people are acting like he played. In the last 10 minutes, if you want to put the game up into quarters, that fourth quarter felt like Milos's time. A big layup to go ahead, go up 4, driving kick to Chris Cenac for 3. He had an assist to JoJo for a dunk at about 7 minutes, and a step back 3 that was very much like very Milos. With about 3 minutes left. That felt like a dagger in the moment. And frankly, I'm like going back and forth and watching the stuff I was doing, and I'm like, oh, that's it. That's the game. I can't believe he just did that. And then 30 seconds later, I walk back. I'm like, oh, they're still like, why hasn't this ended yet? And I really felt like Milos played pretty well in those final 10 minutes, for all his faults in the early part of the game. And I think that the closer aspect of that will be interesting to see. And frankly, maybe in Vegas we'll see one of these deals of a yin and yang with Kingston and him, or Kingston does the 36 minutes he did tonight, then we let Milos close, or something like one of those kind of back and forth like you used to see with Miami Heatles or whatever, right? Like those kinds of combinations, because I trust Sampson to figure it out. I don't mean this in a way that like they're not working on it, but I do think that there's a lot there. Now, there's a lot going on college basketball in general right now, and Houston got number 1 seed in America, got number 1 ranked in America, and everyone kind of questioned it. And I don't think it's questioning it anymore. But I do think there's added context given the rest of the college basketball landscape, and I kind of want to look at that context. Before we get to all that, today's show, as we mentioned, is brought to you by everybody over at Game Time. College football is in full swing. Concerts, pro basketball games, college basketball games, theater, movie, anything you got going on. Game Time is a place to get in on the action, get into those tailgates, the rivalries, find the energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But sometimes getting tickets can feel like more of a battle in the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkouts. Why I and Locked On use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easy way to score the last minute tickets at the best prices. No surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Just a couple of tabs, you find amazing deals. Getting into college football games this weekend, including Houston and TCU, for as low as $20. You get in that game for under $20 a ticket if you go to Game Time. Use Game Time app today. So guess we're going to buy college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Cougs here. And I want to look at all of college basketball when I look at this right fast, because there have been some big wins, and there have frankly been some big wins in the last 10 days. But in the Big 12 and specifically, you had Cincinnati down. They ended up winning by over 20 points. They were down 6 to Mount St. Mary's to open the second half. Utah had a nail biter with Sam Houston State in Salt Lake City. TCU had a late lead and blew it against Michigan. Arizona held on to beat UCLA on the road, and BYU lost a great game, frankly, to UConn at home. And I look at this, it's interesting in that, like, I felt like a year ago, the seeds were kind of reversed. Auburn looked like a team that once they beat Houston was very for real. Right now, Houston beats Auburn, and everyone's like, oh, maybe that number 1 ranking was valid. I look at the rest of the Big 12 was looking, oh, Houston at one point when they were 4-3, it's like, oh, they're vulnerable. We can go get them now. They can't. And I wonder what they're thinking now with Houston having just done this. Now, Houston's schedule does not get easier. I guess in this immediate future, it kind of does, because you have is it Ryder this Thursday? Yeah, Ryder this Thursday. But then you go to Vegas to play Syracuse and Tennessee and TBD, which is going to be a good team in the Las Vegas Players Invitational. Then you return to, I would say, to home. You return to Houston to play Florida State in the Toyota Center. Just across the board, all kinds of chaos happening. And that's all before you can get to playing Arkansas in late December, mid December, the 20th of December, right? It's a gauntlet here, and this is the start of it. But Houston, it does feel like, has passed the first test without their best effort from the entire roster. Some really strong efforts from some certain corners of the roster, but without their full effort, their best effort from the full roster, Houston was able to go toe-to-toe with and ultimately take down an Auburn team that I think deserves some national recognition for how good they are. I would also look at this game and say, yes, Houston wins by a point. But before the foul outs, even when Keyshawn Hall was playing, and really ultimately before the last couple minutes, this game felt a lot less close than that. And when you look at the win probability, it got as high as 91% Houston's favor when Houston went up by 7 points with 2 minutes and 33 seconds to go, right? With 2 minutes and 50 seconds, the Milos Uzan jumper, Milos Uzan 3 with 2 minutes 57 seconds to go, got as high as 90%. And that's a pretty commanding victory in the final 3 minutes. Now, the roller coaster that was last 3 minutes happened. Obviously, I don't mean to say that it didn't happen, but it was a really impressive road performance, in large part because you had Kingston and Cenac playing like lottery picks. Absolutely played like lottery picks. Had people text me like, "Oh well, man, what, are they recruiting point guards because Kingston might be done?" Like, I don't know when Kingston's going pro. I think he is a pro. I think Cenac will be sooner rather than later because 6'11" guys don't just fall off trees like that. I mean, that's a big, strong dude, right? But I look at this performance. I look at this performance as like indicative, like what could happen, because the Big 12 does feel like it's Houston for the taking again as you look around the conference. So I think that's important. The national perspective, I think, is very open. I think it's very much a Houston can go be the big dog on whatever campus they go to, kind of open. I also look at Houston and it's like, okay, if you can perform like that, and then still at some point you're going to bring Emanuel and Milos back to where they were, you're going to have more of an offense out of JoJo Tugler, those things aren't going to click again. You're going to be that team that's going to beat a top 20 or top 10 team decisively, like they almost did today. And I think that's an important aspect of this. Now, they have Ryder on Thursday. Spoiler, I think they win that one. They got a couple big ones next week. Houston, in football terms, has TCU as their final home game this weekend. And then they head off and play at Baylor the final weekend. Baylor looks like I think the best phrase we're allowed to say is dumpster fire. I think that's the best thing we're allowed to say here on that one. So we have all kinds of things to talk about with football as well as basketball this week. And mainly with Ryder happening Thursday, I can imagine football taking a little bit of a precedent, but I also think we're going to have some big commitments this week as well. I know that Houston's in the final couple for Arfanjian, and he announces on November 19th. So that's important. They have a couple of the guards they're looking at too. Hearing good things on it, to make sure you check out all of that. Like I said, I think Gian's announced on the 19th because it's his birthday. And so there's going to be like an announcement ceremony and all of that. So tune into that live wherever you're tuning into stuff, see what his decision is. And that's, like I said, a couple guards are making their decisions this week. It might be worth paying attention to say the very least. Houston, all things, all the time here at Locked On Cougs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. Thank you all so much for making us first listen of the day or your last listen of the evening, whichever. We appreciate each and every one of you. Locked On Cougs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go Cougs.